In this video, we're going to be demonstrating how to use the new header and footer design tools that are built into your website as long as you have converted your website to using our new Flex Pro theme. My website here currently has been converted to Flex Pro, but you'll notice that my header and my footer initially here, they look very similar to what they did before I converted to Flex Pro. So that's one thing to note, is that initially when you do convert your website to Flex Pro, which we do have another help site article and video on, the site is going to try to replicate what you had before. So initially those two spaces on your homepage, your header and your footer, they're going to look pretty similar to how they did initially. That being said, these new header and footer tools that come with Flex Pro are really versatile. They're much more robust. They give you a lot more elements to choose from. So really, we would encourage you to start exploring those. So that's what I'm going to do here. So to start using those new header and footer design tools, I am going to go to my design options page. I'm getting there just by hovering over Snow Dashboard, Design Options. And as long as you have already converted your website to Flex Pro, if you click into this fifth tab on the left, the Site Designer tab, here is where those new header and footer designers appear. So if we look in the body of this page here, up at the top, I can see the current structure of my header. In the middle, you can see the structure of the widget areas on your homepage, and then at the bottom, we have the structure of your footer. One thing you'll notice is that now I am basically viewing my header in terms of the individual components that come together to construct it. So here I'm seeing each of those components individually stacked on top of each other as different rows. So I can see here's my news ticker, my social media search bar, here's my header, and my menu. Those were all pulled in and were already existing on my website before I converted to Flex Pro. Another thing is you'll notice that a couple of these elements have the word legacy following them. And I have this little red message here saying, hey, you're using legacy elements with limited design options. So there's nothing you have to do here. But if you see this little label, basically that means that we have created a newer element that captures the functionality of these legacy elements, but is going to work on your website a lot better and give you a lot more flexibility. So we would encourage you, if you see these legacy elements, to swap them out for their newer replacements. All right, so once you're here, you have a couple of options. One option, especially if you're just getting started with Flex Pro, maybe you just want to start kind of altering what's already here. Maybe you don't want to go for a huge drastic redesign. So each of these elements and their individual settings can be configured by hovering over the element and clicking this little gear icon. That's going to open up the design options for each of the elements, or if you want to swap out an element in a specific area, all you need to do is navigate back and you will see a list of all of the elements that are now available to you. If there are any that are grayed out, that means that it is currently not possible to add them into your specified area, and you'll see that the website will tell you why and how to alter that area if you would really like to incorporate one of those elements into that space. Just some other basic navigation here in terms of the elements themselves. Let's say maybe I want to reorder these elements. Maybe I want my menu to be right up at the top edge of my website. So you can utilize these arrows on the left to grab an element and drag it to reposition the entire row that it's in. You can also delete an element easily just by hovering over it and clicking the X in the top right corner. So just to really demonstrate the full functionality and capacity of these new header and footer design tools, I'm going to completely start from scratch here. So what I'm going to do is just remove all of these elements. You'll see as you remove elements that we think are really important to have, these additional messages will pop up saying, hey, you're missing a header. Hey, you're missing a menu. So it's just a reminder to yourself that you'll want to add those back before saving your design changes. All right, so now I've got a blank canvas to work from, and I'm going to start reconstructing my header here. So the header and the footer areas are made and built up of two different types of spaces. Those two types are rows, which just like you would normally conceptualize a row, those are horizontal spaces. And then you also have columns, which are more vertical spaces. So the very first thing I need to do here is add a row. A nice thing is that these spaces, unlike before where you had to do a lot of resizing of your header graphic if it wasn't fitting properly, these spaces are now fully customizable. So if I need this new row to be 200 pixels wide or 200 pixels tall, all I need to do is place my cursor on the bottom part of it, and now I can just drag it until I find the height that I want to use. You can see you get a live pixel height preview as you move your cursor and adjust the space in real time. All right, so now I've got the basic space that I want to work with. What I'd like to do now though is I want to create 3 columns within this space. So maybe I'll have like my social media icons, maybe a search icon on the left, I'll have my header graphic in the middle, and then maybe I'll put some buttons or something on the right. So to add columns, which again are vertical spaces, what you're going to do is click on this little gear icon on the right of the entire row, and then click Add Column. You can add as many as you want. As you add them, they are going to be continuously added and resized so that they are of equal widths. But as soon as you start adding content, you're going to be able to adjust that. So the first thing I'm going to add here is I'm going to add my header graphic. So I'm just going to, and I said I wanted to add that in the middle, so I'm going to click on Add Content. And now I'm going to select the type of content that I want to put into this space, which of these content blocks I want to utilize. So I'm going to go and use Site Header Graphic. I'm going to upload a new image. All right, so now that it's uploaded, you'll notice within each content block for each element that you choose to incorporate, it's going to have some different design styles that you can play around with. I'm going to make the header area background transparent. I'll show what that means in just a second, and I could configure these settings as well if I wanted to. So now I can see here's my site header. I can tell that I'm probably going to want this space in the middle to be larger because I want that graphic to be the dominant feature. So again, to adjust the width, I'm just going to place my cursor on the right and drag to give it some more space. All right, so now, like I said, I'm going to put my social media icons on the left, but I actually want them to be kind of flushed to the bottom. I don't want them to just float in the middle. So another thing that you can do is you can add rows within columns. And to do that, you're going to click on Add Content, and then you'll see rows as an option. So here now I've split this column into 2 rows of equal heights. I'm going to do the same thing over here for right now. All right, so like I said, I wanted my social media icons to go at the bottom here. So let's start by adding those. Again, for each content block that you opt to use, you have all of these settings. They're a lot more robust than they were before, so play around with those. I'm also going to add a search icon to the bottom right here. So now I've got these 2 spaces at the top here where I really just want it to be blank space. So this is a great opportunity to highlight one other content block that you can now add in your header and your footer, and that is called a spacer. So basically this is just going to be a blank area, but it's going to help you with the spacing and resizing of different elements within your header. So I'm going to add a spacer right here. I'm going to do the same thing on the right. And the last thing here that I'm going to add initially is a menu, because I've still got this red error message telling me that I don't have a menu element. So what I'm going to do now is add a new row. I'm going to add, you'll notice there's a couple of different types of menus now. These are some of the newer features that we've incorporated into the header and footer designer. So you could do a vertical menu, hamburger menu, menu bar, expanded, etc. And then you can select which menu you want to display. So those old menu positions, in the past you could place menus basically in header A or header B in terms of positions. So now those old menu positions are essentially irrelevant, because you can place a menu content block anywhere and select the primary menu that you'd like to use. All right, if I click save, let's go view these changes in real time on my homepage. So now here is the new design of my header initially. So I would probably want to do a little bit more work with the spacing here, maybe just to eliminate some of this white space. I'd probably want to make my menu tabs larger, just because right now they're pretty small. So you can just toggle back and forth and make all of those changes to the individual elements themselves. There are two more things I briefly want to point out. The first is, let's say if we're looking at my header area right now, maybe I wanted the background for everything to be black instead of white. But it's going to take quite a bit of time for me to go into each of these elements and change the background color. So one of the nice things you can do is you can change the default background color and settings for an entire row. So for example, let's say I wanted the background color for all of these elements to be black. So instead of going through individually and making those changes, what you can do is click on this gear icon that we saw before when we added a column. But this time I'm going to click on Edit Row Styles. You'll see now you can set those styles for the entire row. They're going to apply to all of the elements within the row, as long as the element background color is set to transparent. Basically, that means that these row styles are going to be able to shine through. So I'm going to set my background color to black. You'll notice a couple other settings that are stored here. You can stick rows to the top or the bottom of your screen. You can add borders. Maybe I want a red border up at the top. Maybe I want it to be 5 pixels. And maybe I want a bottom margin of 10 pixels, just of white space. Basically, the borders allow you to add colored space, whereas the margins are just going to create some more white space. So now if I save and we refresh my new header area, you can see here is what that looks like with a row background color that is black. The reason that this is white here is because the image itself is white. So in this case, I would need to upload a different graphic with a black background. But you can see it saved me a lot of time, because all 4 of these spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, changed essentially all at once. The last thing that I want to point out when it comes to the header and the footer designer on your website, and I should note that these two areas work exactly the same way. So although I've been demonstrating these features with the header designer, the functionality is completely replicated at the bottom here. So the last thing that I want to point out when it comes to the header and the footer designer is that you'll notice above both of these spaces there is this purple toggle bar. So in the past, basically you could just create one header for your website, and if you wanted to, you could upload a second header graphic that was optimized for people to visit your site on a mobile device or a tablet. So now if you click on this little toggle bar, you can actually completely design separate header and footer versions for different devices that people might be visiting your website from. So here I've got my mobile layout for my header. Here's what it would look like on a tablet. So you can toggle to these different areas, make those changes and save. And then I'll just show you if I resize my browser here quickly, we can see those new versions of my header taking place. So here's what it would look like to someone viewing my website on a tablet. Here's what it would look like for someone visiting my website on a phone. So don't overlook those features. You now have a lot of tools to really optimize the experience of visitors on your website who aren't using a typical desktop browser. All right, so that is going to conclude this video. Again, to start accessing and playing around with the new header and footer design tools on your site, make sure you convert your website to Flex Pro, which we have additional help site videos on. Head to the Site Designer tab within the Design Options page and start playing around. Thank you so much.